So Dungeons & Dragons, tabletop role-playing games in general, let's be honest, they've got a lot of tropes, stereotypes around DMs and players, and some of them are really fun, and some of them are even overhated, like the edgelord, for example. I don't hate all edgelords. In fact, I think some of them can be quite enjoyable. However, on the other hand, there are some tropes that I am absolutely sick and tired of hearing about, both for DMs and for players. So today, I'm going to be putting them to bed. I wrote down some of my least favorite tropes, went on Reddit, saw what tropes that people over there liked and didn't like, and concluded there are 5 of these things that I want to see gone, or at the very least, reduced in quantity. So without further ado, guys, I'm in a hating mood, so let's hate on some tropes. Alright guys, first up, the Horny Bard. Yeah, the asexual guy doesn't like the Horny Bard, whoop-de-friggin' do. But look, I don't hate the Horny Bard, and I don't think that every character who falls into this trope is doomed entirely, but I do think for what it is way too common. This was one of the top answers when I looked on Reddit for tropes people didn't like. I went to DM Academy, and whenever someone brought up a bard and a trope, it was always Horny Bard, because that basically is the only trope associated with the entire class. Ginny D made a whole video about moving on from the Horny Bard, and my opinion is this: I think Horny Bard can be fine. At best, the character can be entertaining, but at worst, the character can be downright creepy, and most of the time, the character is just average, and in my opinion, at this point in D&D's lifespan, freaking boring. We've seen so many Horny Bards at so many tables. A lot of people bring up Scanlan Shorthalt as the best example. This is why people shouldn't hate on the Horny Bard, because Scanlan Shorthalt in Critical Role, he's so awesome. And yeah, I like Scanlan. I like Scanlan a lot. But why was Scanlan awesome? It wasn't because he was a Horny Bard. He was awesome because the Horny Bard was like his mask. His best moments, the moments that make his character, are when he's not a Horny Bard. Explicitly, that is the point. And in terms of humor, I honestly think Sam Riegel's weakest material came from Scanlan's horny moments. I'm not trying to say that Scanlan was never a good comic relief character. God forbid. He was great. But all of his best gags had nothing to do with his horniness. The only time it was funny was when Scanlan fell in love with Percy due to a love potion. That was downright hilarious. But thinking back on that love potion fiasco, where, if you're unaware, Scanlan gets roofied with a love potion, and then looks at Percy, and then falls in love with Percy, who is basically the least likely character Scanlan would ever fall in love with. It was great, but looking back on that moment, if it was almost any other group, I mean, God, wouldn't that be, really creepy at a lot of tables? I mean, if I was in Taliesin Jaffe's position, the guy playing Percy, the character who got fallen in love with, I may be uncomfortable with the situation. Now, in this case, that was not the case. Taliesin was totally ready to play along. Sam Riegel was doing a great job playing out this joke, and not to an extreme degree, but also making it really funny. But it took a lot of skill, a lot of communication, and a group that's been together for years. And I'm really sorry, but most groups just aren't that cohesive. Most people couldn't pull off this kind of thing. It's tough. Beyond all this, the Bard class is so versatile. Beyond all this, though, the Bard class is so versatile. I feel like I'm just gonna rehash that Ginny D video I mentioned, but she goes over a lot of the reasons why she's bummed out that Horny Bard is the default assumption with Bards, because Bards can be great characters in so many stories. Bards can be in scary stories, sad stories. Music and art is so important to human culture and existence. Should it really just be boiled down to sex funny? No, I don't think so. Again, Horny Bard is usually a joke. A lot of people don't play Horny Bard, but it's played up so much, I think it's time to just dial it back a little bit. Especially since, guys, I don't even think it's that funny anymore. It's just boring. Next up, the anti-hero. This might be a bad title for what I'm about to describe, but, just bear with me, I couldn't think of something else. This is not the edgelord. This is a person who knowably harms the rest of their party for the greater good. They may betray the party, steal from the party for some greater goal, and rarely communicate this with the party, which is what makes them frustrating. Look, I've seen people fantasize about playing this kind of character before, because in movies, television, this kind of character is really cool. I mean, anti-heroes are sick. And in a lot of streaming shows, anti-heroes, characters that are a bit darker flavored than the rest of the party, I mean, they're hard not to fall in love with when played right. Percy, Taliesin Jaffe's character that I mentioned earlier, the one that got pranked by Scanlan Vax Grog, that guy, I mean, he started his campaign as kind of an anti-hero. He was a murderous dude on a revenge rampage, and it was awesome. Percy's my favorite character from Critical Role Campaign 1. But, again, while this character can work just like the Horny Bard, it is really, really, really hard to do. Harming the rest of the party can be really frustrating if you are not in communication with everybody else. And sometimes communication is just not gonna solve all the issues. Like, it's one thing to tell the party early on, like, this character has a bit of an evil flavor. It's another thing when stuff is actually happening at the table and people are actually getting frustrated and you're getting flustered and everything is going wrong. That's a whole different ballgame. Betraying the party, killing NPCs, those kind of things can also be really frustrating for the Dungeon Master, who is accustomed to probably working a story around a cohesive party. I'm not saying everyone in the party needs to be like battle droids all in one singular unit, but having somebody who's actively working against them, even if it's for the greater good, being an anti-hero, it's still frustrating. And again, these characters are cool in movies, television shows, stream shows with really talented actors, but I have to say this again, most players just they're not that good, man. I don't know how else to say it. That sounds mean, but it's true, okay? Like, I'm never gonna claim to be as good of a player as Taliesin Jaffe. I wouldn't be able to pull off that kind of character convincingly. I also haven't been playing with most of my groups for as long as Taliesin has been playing with the Critical Role cast. Look, these kind of things, they get easier to pull off the better you know your party. But more and more people are finding their groups online through LFGs. They're going into these brand new games expecting that these people are going to be their best friends when you just don't have that kind of relationship yet. It might be better for you to try another kind of character. There are plenty of edgelord stereotypes out there that don't involve betraying the party, right? Okay, next up, let's move on to Dungeon Masters. The DM is always right. As a Dungeon Master myself, I'd love to always be right, but I'm not. This is a rule that comes up a lot because DMs want to move the game along, and this is good. Look, when there's a rules disagreement, I don't want to debate it for 30 minutes. Hell, I probably don't even want to debate it for 5 minutes. I probably don't even want to debate it at all. If we can't figure it out within, like, a minute, I'm just gonna move on. I want to keep the game flowing, and no one wants to listen to two people argue about rules to the nerd game. So let's move on until after the session. However, that's all this trope should be used for. The DM is not always right. Sometimes you're wrong. And having that kind of really entitled mentality can be problematic for you. I don't think there's a lot of DMs out there that parade around a big old flag that says, I'm better than everyone else. I know everything. Like, most DMs don't think that, genuinely. But it might be a reinforced thought in the back of your mind. Like, I'm the DM. I'm working hard to put this game together for everyone. Why are they arguing with me? Why are they making this so difficult? I mean, it can be frustrating. You are working hard in this game. I mean, like, I hope you are. And objectively speaking, you're probably putting in more effort than your players. So there might be that underlying frustration if someone starts arguing with you on rules. But if you're wrong, if you see that you're wrong, sometimes it's important to accept that you're wrong. Again, I'm not trying to say that you should have in-depth arguments during the game. That's why this Rule 0 exists. The DM is always right during the session. Like, during the session, the DM gets the final say for a bit. The DM delays, but at the end of the session, let's talk about this rule more in depth. Have a discussion, and the DM needs to be ready to admit that they might be wrong. I mean, hell, I'm wrong all the time. No shame in it. Man, as a dungeon master, I'm starting to realize this advice might not be enough. We might need our sponsor! This video is sponsored by Modifius and their new tabletop role-playing game set in Terry Pratchett's Discworld, Adventures in Angmorpork. Yes, that is how it's pronounced. I watched Terry Pratchett do it. But pronunciation is far from the strangest thing you'll find in this book. Discworld is filled with wondrous fantasy and adventure. Oh, and puns. Those two, there's a lot of puns in this game. But beyond the witches and giant space turtles, Discworld also is a game. You'll find plenty of familiar mechanics, your full set of polyhedral dice as you'd expect, but plenty of new material as well to keep your game table engaging if you want to play something new beyond what you're used to. I really like their character sheet. Rather than having a bunch of stats, it's focused way more on the character themselves. Like, for example, you got core traits, quirk traits, you've got the niche they fit into in this strange and wondrous world. It's really cool stuff. Simple on the surface, but it's got a lot of depth. If you guys are interested, then you can head down into the description down below or to the pinned comments where you can check out the Discworld Kickstarter. As always, supporting our sponsors does support us. Thank you so much to Modifius for sponsoring the show. And without further ado, let's get back to the advice. Okay, this might be talking about digital messages, like a DM who's not communicating with their party, which that's another thing. However, I'm mostly referring to DMs who always are talking about their ideas for their campaign. Like, they do years and years and years of work doing the world building, prepping the campaign idea, writing hundreds of NPCs, going in depth on towns and cities, but then they never actually run the game. This is something that's pretty popular in the author community as well. You know, that guy who has 1,000 ideas for his book, but like never writes anything. That happens all the time. And I see it with DMs too. Like, can't tell you the amount of times I've gone to a party, I'm smoking, I'm drinking, I'm doing whatever, and someone comes up to me and says, "Yo man, you play Dungeons and Dragons?" Yeah, I play Dungeons and Dragons. What's up? Oh, dude, I want to play Dungeons and Dragons. I have this awesome campaign idea where the Demogorgon comes out of a planar rift, and then it's a massive crossover between Stranger Things, D&D, and Mortal Kombat. I mean, you'll like play as like pre-made Mortal Kombat characters. It's gonna be so... Like, do you have any players? No. Cool. And in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, that game's never gonna happen, is it? And look, this is not really a horrible thing by any means. I mean, this hypothetical person, is not doing any harm by not running a game, but I do think it sucks for that person. I mean, you put in all this effort into running a game that you're not actually going to run. Look, I was this person too. I mean, Eris, my homebrew world, it started as a fantasy that I had in my brain while I was mundanely working through my regional practices on my saxophone. It was a form of escapism for me, and there's nothing wrong with that. But eventually, I sat down with some friends, and I played the game. You don't have to have a finished world or a finalized, perfected concept before you play at a table. Arguably, that might hurt you. Like, there are DMs that get so attached to this, like, 5-year plan. This is something I've heard before. The 5-year plan that's going to culminate in this epic ending. But first, and this sucks to say, but a lot of campaigns don't make it to the end, just for starters. I'm sorry. But the other thing is that your players might make another choice. Like, there are things that you're going to want to change later on, and being so chained down to your initial ideas, like, that's gonna hold you back as a dungeon master. Look, all this pre-work, it's fine. Prep is good. I like prepping. I don't believe in over-preparing. I think you should prepare a lot, generally speaking. But this just stops you from getting behind the screen. If you want to DM, find a group and start DMing. Don't just fantasize about it, because in that case, you're never actually gonna do it. Okay. The last thing and I'm probably going to take this in the direction you're not expecting, but just hear me out. I really don't like the DM who should just write a book. Like, this is not really a DM trope. It's something people say to DMs, and there are absolutely times where it is warranted. Like, we read RPG horror stories here, for God's sakes. Like, I've seen plenty of DMs who need to get out from behind the screen and just do, like, literally anything else with their lives. Like, plenty of bad DMs, believe me. But I've also seen a lot of people telling DMs who have even the most mundane of problems, give up, go write a book. And that sucks. Okay, they're not saying it like that. I think these people are trying to be helpful, but I think people are too quick to say that DMs should just give up on DMing. Like, I saw a DM who was struggling with their campaign concept. Like, just in general right now, they weren't really enjoying the location they were currently in. They weren't enjoying DMing in that spot, in this village, and that really bummed them out and slowed the momentum of their game. And someone responded with, well, if you don't enjoy DMing for your game, just write a book. And I'm thinking, that's not very helpful. The DM's problem is the setting. So change up the setting, you know? DM somewhere else. Like, what kind of settings do you enjoy? Change to do that instead. I brought up Ginny D earlier, but I'll bring her up again. She had this problem too. She DM'd in this sprawling kingdom because that's what she saw Matt Mercer do on Critical Role, but that's not what she enjoys. She enjoys smaller fairy courts or DMing in isolated locations. That's what she likes, so she changed up to do that instead. She didn't give up on DMing entirely just because her first attempt didn't work out due to a misunderstanding of what she liked in DMing. I mean, this is especially a problem for new DMs. You need to learn what you really enjoy, what you don't enjoy. Like, do you really enjoy medieval fantasy? Maybe you don't. Maybe you want something more sci-fi, something more cyberpunk, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you discover that by playing the game. If everyone were to give up the moment they encountered something even minorly inconvenient and go write a book instead, no one would be DMing, man. Look, there are plenty of DMs out there who apparently despise the game nature of the tabletop role-playing game. And for those people, yeah, write a book. Plenty of people who don't like that player choice is a thing. For those people, write a book. But for DMs who are just still trying to find their footing, I don't think we should dismiss them outright. Hell, DMs out there who struggle with player agency or the game aspect of TTRPGs, I mean, maybe they just need to try a different TTRPG. Like GMs who want a lot more control over the story, play solo TTRPGs. There are plenty out there. DMs who struggle a lot with the super gamified aspects of something like Pathfinder or Draw Steel or D&D, maybe they need a simpler game to play. Those things are also valid. They don't need to give up to write a book instead. My point is this. I don't want to encourage DMs to give up so easily. Like I said, DMing is not for everyone. And if it's not for you, that's okay. But there are solutions to a lot of the problems that DMs face in D&D, especially when they're finding their footing, beyond just giving up and writing a book. Oh, and in case you're wondering, Crispy, what about the False Hydra? You've said before that that's like your least favorite D&D monster and trope. Why didn't you talk about it? Don't worry. I have a full video. God's favorite princess is going to be taking on the False Hydra and hopefully felling it once and for all because I'm freaking tired of hearing about that thing. But anyway, look forward to that on Halloween. If you guys enjoyed this video, then you might enjoy our last Halloween episode. I dressed as Amity Blight and talked about bully characters in Dungeons & Dragons. It's linked in the cards. But before you go, please do leave a like on this one and subscribe to Crispy's Tavern so you don't miss any of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own tips or thoughts, you can go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of comments, leave your least favorite D&D trope down in the comments down below. But in any case, in essence, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Farewell. Never get the mic placement right.